Hi, how's everybody doing today? This is Rich here on behalf of Rich TV Live with our very special guest. It is Katie Field, president of Halo Labs. How you doing today, Katie?
Hi- I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Been a while since you've been on the show. How you been?
Yeah, everything's been going well. Everything's going very quickly in the market and with COVID and lots of things to manage, but the company's been doing better than ever before. And thankfully,
Wow,
I've also been healthy and my family's been healthy. So all of that is a blessing.
very good. So let's get right into it. So obviously we're in a crazy world. 2020 has been not what anybody really expected. I don't think anybody could have anticipated we'd be in a global pandemic. And
No.
it's really bad in America. It's sad as a Canadian to see what's happening there, and the numbers just really frightening. 3 million people is frightening, right? So, how are you guys dealing with that? How is that affecting your business? How is that shaping your business? I see a lot of businesses are starting to go bankrupt because of this. Are you guys seeing any effects of this in your business?
Yes, I mean, we actually have had kind of a mixed blessing here in the sense that, I mean, it's just honestly, it's terrible the way that this disease has been impacting the US. And some states have responded differently. They maybe were more affected at the beginning, and then they instituted really strict lockdown. They instituted really good SOPs on how to treat at emergency, centers and emergency rooms, and then into hospital admission. Or they just had more access to healthcare, more access to supplies to treat, and versus some other states, and perhaps not quite as affected at first, and then started reopening. And then the disease has now really, the virus has really sprung out of control. So to us, it's, just looking at it sort of from 30,000 feet, it's just been a mixed bag for the US. As far as cannabis goes, though, and I would say this is true of a lot of our industry, it's true of our company, certainly, we've been deemed an essential business. So what that means is that we've been able to continue operating despite the pandemic. Now, obviously, that's created additional operational constraints for us and constraints that we welcome, quite frankly, because it means that our facilities are cleaner than ever before. Not that they weren't clean before, but now we're going above and beyond. We are proactively monitoring all of those requirements from local government, state government, and federal government. But what it also means is just additional layers of compliance. It means that we're monitoring employees and making sure that everyone's healthy and taking care of themselves and has access to leave if they need it. We're abiding by all those standards. But thankfully, we have been able to continue operating. That is the point. And we've seen an uptick in demand. Particularly in Oregon, I believe with the BDS analytics figures that were just released in May, Oregon has almost doubled year over
Wow.
year, compared to May of last year, which is really amazing because that's been a mature market for some time, yet there's still so much growth. And we've seen a little bit of an uptick in California as well. Nevada is really the only market where there has been a decline, and that really has to do with the fact that tourism is down due to the pandemic. But for us, most of our sales are concentrated in California and Oregon, so we've been experiencing a lift actually.
Wow. So when you say you've experienced the lift, what do you mean? Are you seeing increased sales now? I know I've heard a lot of people are
Yes.
seeing increased sales. I guess people are at home right now and spending more time purchasing cannabis products, I'm assuming. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes, correct. No, our sales are up. They're up in Oregon, and in California. No, we've shifted a little bit the focus. In 2020, we became a direct to dispensary. So we've been organically growing a direct to dispensary business, but that's basically been doubling month over month. In May, and we released some preliminary press on this. They were unaudited, unreviewed figures, but people can check our press releases. But I can say that with regard to June, and we'll be releasing some information too. We're up again. So the good news is that we have been experiencing from this positive market trends, partially due to COVID. That yes, the company is experiencing a benefit from that in our sales as well. And the other thing that I would highlight too, just to give the viewers here an insight into how we're thinking about things, it's not just that we're doing our bread and butter, our same old bread and butter, which is, vapes and concentrates. We've actually been looking at consumption patterns and how those have been evolving during COVID, which has actually been shifting towards edibles to some extent. And we're redoubling our efforts there, both to relaunch, additional SKUs in Oregon, as well as in California, to get our edibles line out in California as well. So that will all be incremental. We see that as just incremental and not cannibalizing our current cartridge business in California, and it will build on what we're doing in Oregon too.
Is there any news that, I know you guys have so much news, is there any news that has happened recently that you want to discuss or talk about, something that you're really proud of or something that you think that the audience needs to know about?
Sure. Well, I would definitely draw everyone's attention to the closing of North Hollywood dispensary that occurred just at the beginning of this week.
Great.
This was really tremendous, because what it is it's really bringing us essentially at 100% verticalization. Although we're not cultivating yet in California, that's also on our radar. But in California, this is now complete vertical integration. And when you think about it, and you think about the fact that we're already doing direct to dispensary, almost $1 million in retail sales. So you double it, it would be retail sales. That's our wholesale business, which continues to grow. Then you open a dispensary and it just layers on top of that, so there's a huge opportunity now that we've closed North Hollywood. And I'll talk about some regulatory developments that I believe will also accelerate our opening. But I think there's a huge potential in California to just continue on our growth trajectory in ways that are completely accretive to California, and not cannibalizing anything we're doing right now as far as direct wholesale sales. So, but going back to those regulatory developments, it was great, because as we were closing this transaction, there was movement at the local level to speed up the approval process. And as everyone knows, this is a highly regulated industry. So just because you have a winning application, it doesn't mean that you're going to open your doors tomorrow. There's still steps that need to be done. So, but what did happen is, locally speaking, the City Council of Los Angeles adopted regulations that allow a streamlined approval process that by, I believe, July 13th, the mayor has to sign into effect. And so what that will do is it will precipitate initial pre-approvals to get state licensed. And then after you're built out, they come and do a final inspection, and you're basically good to go. So to me, that is a pretty clear path to opening by year end. Wow. And I just, that was thrilling that as we were closing this transaction, we really saw that materialize. So it will become operational. That's always what you look at. Yes, you're approved to operate, but there's still more work to be done. And now the local kind of, it was stagnant. Now that has that momentum. So that's great. That's progressing really well. That's that first one that I would say has been, real exciting for us this week. The other thing that is will be, again, publishing on this later this week, but as a little tidbit, we did get really, really positive indication from the Central Bank of Lesotho, nice, who was basically the primary gating factor for us to close that transaction. So everything is really kind of coming together here on the Buffalo front, and we'll be publishing more information about that soon.
That's very positive. That's very positive.
Yes, it's very positive. We're very, very pleased, and we're very excited to continue with that process, as you can imagine.
I know that Kieran is always traveling, so how has that affected your guys' business? Because you guys can't really travel to Africa right now, right?
No, we can't travel.
So
and quite frankly, we're still at the mercy of what governments are doing, and not just our state governments or local governments, but also what other countries are doing in terms of restricting travel, import, export. I mean, this is affected worldwide. Now, it is starting to open a bit, and even in South Africa and Lesotho, but it's still not at 100% open. So it's not so much that our lack of being able to travel has really affected, because that's still in a process of reopening itself. But that being said, all that was in process is still going. You know, those initial harvests are being dried and stored and tested. Additional legwork is still being done. The other nice thing that it's given us an opportunity to do is really get ready to get our GACP credentials. Having some of that time to sit and digest, not that we're not working, of course we're working, we're just, you know, not sending teams there to, you know, work 10 times as much, right? But we've been able to focus on getting those SOPs and policies in place to get signed off and get our GACP credentials. So to me, we've made progress on that front, and we'll just kind of continue pushing forward that when it is fully open, when Institute is fully reopened, we'll be in a great position to hit the ground running.
And you guys right now are also doing some business. You're in the process of doing some business in Canada. Do you have an update on that?
Yeah, no, that's been great. I mean, my understanding is that the governments, the province governments, they're, you know, we don't like to put the cart before the horse in terms of saying, oh, yes, we're already approved. But the process of doing this transaction, we've had to submit applications to operate these dispensaries, the ones that we have a deal on it with High Tide.
Yes.
So we've done that. We've submitted the application. So, but like any government, you want to give them their space to review because they are the experts. They are the regulating experts, and you want to respect that. So we're expecting to get good news throughout, probably I would say the summer, but it all is dependent, of course, on how quickly they're moving. And, one thing that I will say, it's one thing that you touched on earlier, is that I think Canada has done a great job, and the provinces have done a great job containing this virus. But also with that is, hey, are things processing as quickly as they would have before? Are applications processing as quickly as they were before? No, absolutely not. Of course they're not. So it's just something that we have to keep checking in on and make sure that we get our other ducks in a row. So
I've been feeling like this world is going more to a work from home model.
True.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I agree with that. I agree. We have to use these tools at our disposal to be effective.
Yes.
We have to use Zoom. We have GoToMeeting at our company. We use Slack. We use all of these channels, but we do need to be able to collaborate virtually. I believe in the power of collaboration in person. I truly do. But now we don't have that luxury.
Absolutely.
We just don't have that luxury. So yet our investors, our customers are still expecting good results. So it's not an excuse. So we have to just continue learning how to collaborate virtually and improving every day.
It's frightening, actually, to think, there are businesses that are billion-dollar companies that are going bankrupt, right?
It is mind-blowing. Yes, no, there was actually a list that was just published. I forget which might have been the Wall Street Journal, but yeah, I mean, they were just these very large Fortune, 500 companies that are just, okay, that one's filing for bankruptcy.
Yeah,
and you're thinking, whoa.
I mean, just imagine operating, a billion-dollar business and you've been shut down for 6 months.
It's
half a year.
That's the point. You can't. So
and a lot of people are putting a lot of blaming Trump, and everyone wants to blame Trump, right? And obviously, America went back to work too soon. This is what everyone's saying. But how long can you stay at home? Right?
I agree. No, look,
it's crazy.
At the end
it's
of
a crazy
the day,
situation.
It's such a balance. It's such a balance. And one thing that you learn in U.S. government, and I remember taking my U.S. government class in high school many, many years ago, but they teach you about federalism, and they teach you that there are national rights and there are states' rights. And sometimes on matters like this, yes, the federal government can set directive, but at the end of the day, states will do what they want. They will do what they want. And there is that tension. And that's the way our founders invented this country. So there's not a lot that we can do about it, especially in a highly polarized political environment. So it's, I tend to think there isn't one causing factor for any of this. It's just something that we have to get through and we have to manage. And at Halo, what we believe is abiding by every piece of guidance we can possibly abide by. And that's what we've been doing. So we've been doing process maps and, what if an employee demonstrates X, Y, and Z symptoms? What do you do? How long are they out for? What leave are they eligible for? Cleaning checklists, protocol, all of that. I mean, that's been something that, yes, we already were doing that to some extent, but now we've redoubled our efforts. We're communicating about it on a daily basis amongst the executives and then with the facility managers. We have appointed at each facility a director of safety and health, essentially. That's not their sole job, but part of their job is to correspond with our director of HR at corporate and safety officer at corporate. So they're in constant communication, making sure that these protocols are being followed. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to do our part. We're obeying mask protocols. We're making sure our employees obey mask protocols. We're ordering masks in advance, all the PPE that our employees need to be in this manufacturing environment. Those are the things that we're doing. And we just are also, I think, have everyone that's been affected by this on our minds and our thoughts and our prayers, and just try to do our part. That's what we're trying to do.
Can you touch on the CLB approval that you guys are working on?
Yes, absolutely. So that positive indication that I mentioned earlier, they've basically greenlighted the transaction at this point, which means that final gating factor, and we'll be, giving all those little bullet points and what this means and what the timeline could be, and all of that will be, giving some information on that. But this basically now will precipitate the closing of the transaction, which is wonderful. That is really, and a lot of it was already teed up in advance. It's something that obviously at the board level we've been discussing for so long. We've been, had multiple meetings on it. There have been resolutions on it. So all of this has been done. All of this has laid the groundwork that now we really just have the closing documents and, a couple other checkpoints. But really, it's something that we've been communicating with our exchange about. So there's not going to be any reinventing the wheel here. It's really a clear path to becoming, to fully merging with Buffalo. So,
as the president of Halo Labs, you guys are in a sector right now that we've predicted for years now would be, one of the biggest growing sectors in the world. Now,
correct.
We've seen huge growth in the cannabis sector from 2017 to about 2019, and in the stock prices, at least, we've now seen the prices really get
tank
heavily oversold, right?
Sure.
So what do you say to those investors that are kind of like, cannabis right now isn't doing well. I'm going to look into something else. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think that this is going to come back? Do you think it's going to come back soon? When cannabis is hot, it's one of the hottest sectors in the world. Like when it exploded in 2017, 2018, it was the only thing anyone ever talked about in Canada.
That's true. That is true.
Right? Like it was the hottest sector in the planet.
Well, to me, back in those days, right? And in cannabis, it's like dog years. We always say that. So 2 years in cannabis is, 10 or 15 years in another industry. So that's why I say back in those days. But back in those days, and this isn't a ding, it's just how everyone was investing. They were investing on, there's an approved facility for 100,000 or 200,000 square feet, and that means we're going to have this output. Well, those facilities weren't built yet, or they weren't actually growing plants yet, or they weren't actually producing products yet. So that's a process, right? So the fact that it wasn't producing revenue within that year to the expectation or the tune of what everyone thought, I mean, that shouldn't have come as a huge surprise. And now we've even taken the next level, which is investors are saying, look, I don't really care about your revenue. I want to see your profits. I want to see when I'm going to get a return from this, or when you guys are going to become self-sustaining so you don't have to continue raising money to operate. So the investors have gotten, very sophisticated with how they're viewing our sector. To me, I think this is the point where it has come down. There has been a lull, if you will, and there are going to be some great buys right now.
Absolutely.
And so that is something that I would say, I think now is actually a great time to get it into cannabis, back into cannabis investing, because it's going to go up. It really, that is, I think just intuitively, we expect that with any industry, and this is going to be a time where there are good buys. That's what I perceive. The other thing that I would add to that is, just to keep an eye on, who is actually producing results and who is actually producing revenue and who's communicating about strategies to either continue operating in this environment, capitalize on this environment, that know about the market statistics, that are, doing products that customers want, and, also pushing the envelope as far as brands go. Where are those brands? How are they thinking? What's their overarching strategy to get to the next level? And, look at what the companies are doing and what they're saying and communicating to know that they do have that runway to those results everyone's expecting. And I think that we are going to see, especially in the U.S., once finance is much easier, and by that I mean we don't have to use cash for working capital. We have lines of credit. We can do traditional bank. We can do all of this. I think you are going to see a huge explosion as well, because businesses will be able to operate like any other agricultural business. When I started, when I left consulting, I went in-house for one of the largest agricultural companies in the country. It was horticultural companies. I worked at Costa Farms. That's how I got into cannabis. But they in order to operate, had a very large line of credit because they had 9-month lead times on some of their plants, right? I mean, they're not going to pay for that in cash up front to then only get cash to their customers 9 months later. They're not going to do that, but that's how we have to operate in cannabis, right? So it's just been a huge constraint, and one that most farming, agricultural, horticultural companies don't have to deal with. So I think, again, we just have to keep pushing forward. At Halo, we just continue to execute. We try to execute on our business plan. We try to make products, sell them, and develop new products that customers want. And I think that, we just, as an industry, once we get to that next level, once financing becomes more available, this sector we will see a big change, I think.
I agree with you. I've been really doing a lot of research and just studying following the money. And what I've learned is that the big money, it flows into hot sectors in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. Like right now, you can clearly see the money's going into COVID-19 stocks. Like we've seen
True.
NVAX, I've seen it go from $4 to $100. I've seen Inovio go from $2 to $35. I've seen CODX go from $2 to $20. I've seen these coronavirus test kits, vaccine stocks, anything related to coronavirus just explode. I saw Sona Canadian stock, go from a penny to $8. Like unbelievable.
Right.
In a period of months. This is the type of excitement that was in the cannabis sector before. Now,
Absolutely.
all that money seems to be flying into coronavirus type stocks or plant-based foods, electric vehicles. You see it with Tesla. It's ridiculous what's happening with Tesla.
Right.
We've seen money keep flowing into Amazon. We've seen money keep flowing into Shopify. So even in the worst of times, the market is very close to all-time highs. Is this sustainable?
That's a great question. I would say specifically regarding, I think some sectors are more sustainable than others. I mean, Amazon has proven to just continue to dominate in
Absolutely.
general. It's just been amazing. I read every day, and I think even my son, who's in 7th grade, just left 7th grade, now going into 8th grade. He knows about Amazon, and he knows if we had invested $1 of stock back in the day, we'd be whatever. He already knows that. So everyone knows the Amazon story. But with COVID, that is the kind of thing that, look, I think now there will absolutely be an increased demand in PPE, right? Masks, gloves, this kind of thing. That'll just be with us for a while. But a lot of these companies that are doing biotech type vaccines or treatments, they're highly speculative.
Yes.
Even more so than cannabis.
Yes, and that's where I was.
If you grow it, you get a product.
Yeah, and that's where I wanted to go. Like, none of these companies have revenues, guys. None of them.
Exactly.
Right? Like, none of them have revenues. So everyone's like, cannabis doesn't have well, none of these companies have revenues. And most of them have been in debt for years. Like, Inovio is a crazy story because they've never actually brought a product to market. They've been around for 20 years. Stock goes from $2 to $35,
Right.
and they still
Right.
don't have a product that they ever brought to market.
Right.
And
What a
shorters are
track record.
yeah, shorters are attacking it. They're in tons of debt, but they got $5 million from Bill Gates. They got I think it was a huge amount of money, 70 or $80 million from the Department of Defense. Now,
Right.
NVAX got $1.6 billion from the government
Saw that.
yesterday.
I
So
know.
just crazy money being thrown around, right? So it goes to show that it's like money goes into sectors when the big money goes into sectors when they want to. So when they decide that it's the time to roll into cannabis, we know they're going to explode.
Exactly. And honestly, the companies that are around at that point are the ones that have survived the most dire times.
Yes.
That can actually effectively operate in a better environment, an improved environment. So again, we're around to stay, and we're just going to continue executing day in, day out. We're not going to get caught up with the hype. We're not going to get depressed with any downturns. We're not going to get caught up with the hype. We're just going to continue to do our job day over day. But I agree fully with what you're saying. I mean, to say that a COVID-19 treatment related company is anything but highly speculative is
no different.
Come on, I mean,
it's no different, guys. It's no different than what happened in the cannabis stocks, and it's a bubble too. And yes, the cannabis sector did burst because the companies were heavily overpriced based on their revenue. Well, what do you think is happening right now with all these coronavirus companies? NVAX has no revenue, right? And they're at $100 right now. So Inovio has no revenue, and they're at like $20. So you're seeing companies that are exploding, similar to what we saw with Tilray. Tilray went from $20 to $300. Obviously, very speculative. Obviously wasn't based on any real fundamentals. But at the end of the day, if you bought Tilray and the stock went to $300, you should have sold it, right?
You should have sold it.
That's why we trade, right? That's why we trade, right? You buy low, you sell high. Mm-hmm. And right now in the cannabis sector, we may find the bottom, and we may find the best time to position ourselves in the best companies. When somebody asks, why invest in Halo? What would be the best answer from the president of the company?
Well, I think what you can expect with Halo is continued execution in Oregon and California. California has a great potential, like I said, once the dispensary is open, to almost double overnight once we open the doors. So that, to me, it's just, we've done a great job executing in both of those markets. The other advantage with Halo is the fact that we do have an international growth story here. And that, again, is something that when it takes off internationally, we're going to see markets open. We're going to see cost of production become more important. The fact that we have the starting of the supply chain in a low cost production environment will make us highly competitive. And we're lining all of that up so that there is a pathway in the supply chain from Lesotho to the EU, and getting all those credentials in place. So we have that avenue, which, again, that does not, detract in any way, shape, or form from what we're doing on U.S. basis. It only builds upon it. And then, those are, two, to me, very compelling reasons. But we also, I think, to add on to that, we have developed some very exciting brand partnerships. I think we'll also see brands becoming increasingly important as, again, potentially we experience some nationalization, and this, not nationalization in the sense that, interstate commerce in the U.S., because the certain states have rolled out in a very controlled manner where you're not getting all of those brands, you're not getting the same prices that you do on the West Coast, you're not getting all of that competition. But because the West Coast is a highly competitive environment, you are seeing the best brands come out of the West Coast. And those are the ones that are going to be around, when the US opens up and the East Coast becomes less regulated. So to me, that's something that we've been on the forefront of. And we have some really exciting partnerships that we've announced, and we're growing special genetics in Oregon. Those have all been planted. So I think that we have both a combination of, hey, we've been executing, we've been in this a while, we're going to be around to stay, but we also have new plans for the future that are really coming to fruition. So
Very good.
that's what I would say.
Well, congratulations on all your success. I have one question here from the audience from Jason.
Sure.
Does Halo
Mm-hmm.
plan on using consumer packaging that's biodegradable, hemp-based plastics? The waste fills our waters.
Sure. I think, packaging is something that we look at as really for multiple reasons, both for sustainability purposes, also as an area where we can really improve our efficiencies. And I think that's something that we've been talking about. We don't use a lot of plastic in our packaging in general. And just kind of thinking through all of our SKUs, we have cardboard boxes. I mean, obviously they look more than that. They're designed with the brands, but we do those for our live resin pucks. We do those for our vape pens. To keep in mind, though, I will say, because of the child-resistant nature of what we have to do, some of that we are constrained by in terms of they may tend to have a little plastic elements to it. But we always look for new packaging solutions, and we want to, resonate with consumers that absolutely appreciate that. They appreciate not having environmental effects based on their consumption. So that's a great point. It's something that we can continue to look at and improve upon. And I'll get back to my product development team about that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Let's have you here again. Anytime you have any big news or anything you'd like to talk about or just an update, we'd love to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Katie
All
Field,
right.
president of Halo Labs. Continue with all your hard work. Stay safe. And hopefully
Thank
we
you.
can get everything back to normal in this crazy world and we can just continue to grow this business and we'll see Halo Labs.
Absolutely.
We'll see Halo Labs doing some really big business with people like G-Eazy.
That has been really cool. So to be continued in due/short course. So thank you very much.
Okay, everybody, stay tuned. Thank you guys for watching. This is Rich from Rich to Be Live with Katie Field, president of Halo Labs. Have a nice day.
Bye.